The Cold War was the name given to the conflict between the USSR and the United States after the end of World War II. This conflict dominated international affairs for many years and had many major crises that may have led to the beginning of World War III. The most important events during this period were the Cuban Missile Crisis, the wars in Vietnam and Korea, and the fall of the Berlin Wall. But the most worrying issue during this time was the massive production of WMDs, weapons of mass destruction, by the Soviets and the Americans and their activation. This conflict arose right after World War II because of the difference in ideology, capitalism versus communism. This formed the basis of an international power struggle with both sides vying for dominance, exploiting every opportunity for expansion anywhere in the world. People would think that these two powers were friendly allies during World War II, but this is not the case. These two hated each other but decided to unite because of their common enemy. So after the war ended, there was no need for the alliance anymore. One had a vast army in the field, the Soviet Union with its Red Army supremely led by Zhukov, while the other, the Americans, had the most powerful weapon in the world, the A-bomb, and the Soviets had no way of knowing how many America had. The main cause for this conflict was the mutual distrust between these countries. After the Soviets saw the massive power of the A-bomb, they worried about what other weapons or information the Americans were hiding from them and how it could be used to destroy them. The Soviets believed that they needed to get hold of that information before it was too late. The task of obtaining this information fell to the KGB. The KGB was the Committee for State Security, the main security agency for the Soviet Union from 1954 until its collapse in 1991. It was formed in 1954. Its main functions were foreign intelligence, counterintelligence, guarding the State Board of USSR, guarding the leadership of the Central Committee of the Communist Party and the Soviet government, combating nationalism, dissent, anti-Soviet activities, and most importantly, spying. The KGB was the world's most effective information gathering organization. It operated legal and illegal espionage residency in target countries where a legal resident gathered intelligence while based at a Soviet embassy or consulate. The illegal resident spied unprotected by diplomatic immunity and worked independently of Soviet diplomatic and trade missions. Although these spies did gather information, the ones that provided the most were the traitors of their own countries or counter-spies. These traitors could reveal high clearance information to the KGB because of their high positions in intelligence gathering agencies like the CIA. One of the most famous of these is Aldrich Ames. He is an American convicted in 1994 of espionage against his own country. He is serving life sentence. Ames was formerly a CIA counterintelligence officer and analyst who committed treason against his own country by spying for the Soviet Union and Russia. So far as it is known, Ames compromised the second largest number of CIA assets, second only to those betrayed by Robert Hansen. Ames was born in River Falls, Wisconsin to a CIA officer that guided him in that direction. Ames started in the CIA by taking low-profile jobs until he completed a bachelor's degree in history at George Washington University and entered the career trainee program. He then took different jobs in many parts of the world like Turkey and Mexico as an agent gathering information. Then, in September 1983, the CIA assigned Ames back to the CE division in Washington, placing him in the most sensitive element of the Department of Operations, that responsible for Soviet counterintelligence. Ames had access to all the CIA plans and operations against the KGB and the GRU, Soviet military intelligence. With this information, he began contacting people inside the Soviet embassy. Ames provided information to the Soviets that he believed was essentially valueless, but that would establish his credentials as a CIA insider. He also asked for $50,000, which the Soviets quickly paid. Ames later claimed that he had not prepared for more than the initial con game to satisfy his immediate indebtedness, but once having crossed a line, he could never step back. Ames soon identified more than 10 top-level CIA and FBI sources who were reporting on Soviet activities. The KGB began to capture and execute these spies at an extraordinary rate that alarmed the CIA. They began to search what the problem was, but weren't sure there was a mole. Meanwhile, Ames continued to meet openly with his contact at the Soviet embassy, Sergei Chuvakin. And for a time, Ames summarized for the CIA and FBI the progress of what he portrayed as an attempt to recruit the Soviets. In fact, Ames received $20,000 to $50,000 every time the two had lunch. Ultimately, Ames received $4.6 million from the Soviets, which allowed him to enjoy a lifestyle well beyond the means of a CIA officer. In late 1986, the CIA assembled a team to investigate the source of the leaks. The team, led by Paul Redman and consisting of Jen Vertfuel and 4 other investigators, examined different possible causes, including the possibility that the KGB had either bugged the agency, intercepted its communications, or placed a mole. By 1990, the CIA was certain there was a mole in the agency, and Recruitment of new Soviet agents came to a virtual halt from fear that the agency could not protect its current assets. Since Ames was not very careful, he left some clues that led the mole trail to him, like his expenses that exceeded his monthly salary. The CIA began gathering information and evidence for his arrest. The CIA and FBI began an extensive investigation of Ames that included electronic surveillance, combing to his trash, and monitor installed his car to track his movement. He and his wife were arrested on February 21st, 1994. It is estimated that the information Ames provided to the Soviets led to the compromise of at least 100 U.S. intelligence operations and to the execution of at least 10 U.S. sources. Aldrich Ames, during the 9 years that he worked for the KGB as a mole, single-handedly shut down the CIA's eyes and ears in the Soviet Union by telling the Russians in 1985 the names of every human asset that the U.S. had working for them in there. In all, he sold the KGB the names of 25 sources.